Welcome to the Language Alchemy Podcast, where we explore how our language and communication patterns directly impact our lives and relationships, and where you get conscious communication tools to bring forth more authenticity and compassion to all your relationships. Thank you for joining me today. This is your host, Alejandra Siroka, a communication teacher and coach who is devoted to helping multicultural individuals, change makers, and couples engaged in personal growth experience the lives and relationships they long for through the power of transformative communication. Now, what if I told you that most conflicts in a relationship aren't really about what you think they are about? In today's episode, life coach Sara L interviews me about a hidden factor behind countless arguments between couples, co-workers, and friends. And no, this is not about money, household chores, or work stress. It's something far more fundamental that's been flying under the radar. Are you curious? Well, this has to do about how our brains process and organize time. It turns out that we all have different time types, and when these clash, miscommunication and frustration are likely to follow. Once I learned about this, everything clicked. Past heated discussions with my husband suddenly made sense. And most importantly, we have both learned how to prevent so many arguments. When you stay until the end, you are going to discover your own time type and learn how it's been influencing your most important relationships without you even realizing it. And now let's listen to this conversation about time and communication.
Hello, and welcome to Make Everyday Extraordinary. I'm here with Alejandra Siroka, a transformative coach who has devoted her life to studying and teaching conscious communication skills, which are essential for a fulfilling life and meaningful relationships. Alejandra is the host of the Language of Alchemy podcast and founder of Language Alchemy, a transformative process for multicultural change agents, couples, and groups who are engaged in personal growth so that they can maintain thriving, conscious relationships. Today, I'm excited for Alejandra to share about two distinct ways that people organize time and how understanding these will bring greater depth and clarity to your relationships. Alejandra, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Sara.
So today we're talking about time and how to expand people's sense of time. I know you have a really unique perspective on two types of timers that people have kind of operating within them. Can you tell us a little bit about those and how each of those types, if you will, perceives when time is running out?
Yes, absolutely. So with time, like with any other concept, our brain has a particular relationship to it. The brain organizes the concept of time differently. All of us human beings are on a spectrum. On one side, we have what we call in timers. And when I'm saying this is the term that was given by transformational NLP, and in particular, my mentor taught me this. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, which has to do with how our brain organizes language and how we communicate based on that organization. In timers are people who experience time, the concept of time, because they've organized it that way in their brains as something elastic, something to sort of get lost in. These are people who usually find themselves at 2 p.m. saying, "What? It's 2 p.m.? How did that happen?" And on the other side of the spectrum, we have what's called the through timers. So on that other side of the spectrum, we have the through timers. And the through timers have like a GPS internalized about time. They know where they are in time. And so they're able to move through time in what you could call a very efficient way. So it depends on how we organize the concept of time in our brain that we can sometimes feel what I've heard you say many times and what I hear many of my communication coaching clients say, there's never enough time. This is what the in timers would usually say. There's never enough time because they get lost in the sense of elasticity of time, or there's only enough time to do certain things, which would be the construct of the through timer.
Oh, wow. And is this timer type something we're born with? Do we learn it? Where does it come from?
Well, it is both a combination of what we're born with and what we learn. And there are different cultures that organize time differently. So, for example, the United States, where you and I are, is a through time culture. We expect certain things to happen at a certain time. You go to a play and the play is set to start at 8 p.m. You expect that the play would start at 8 p.m. In Argentina, where I was born, that is an in time culture. So you go to a play at 8 p.m., you're lucky if people are sitting at 8 p.m. you know, so at around 8:30, people start clapping and saying, okay, I think most of us, the audience, are here. Can we start? And that is very common and accepted. Yes, it's
That's
not a
so
problem at
funny.
all. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love those cultures where, time is a little bit more fluid, and that's beautiful. You also have talked about how in couples, tell us a little bit about what can happen when you have a through timer and an in timer together in a relationship.
Oh, a lot can happen. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about because, as it turns out, I have supported hundreds of couples with their communication. And for some reason that we do not understand, it seems like the in timers attract through timers and vice versa. And because, like anything else, how our brains organize time impacts our communication. Everything impacts our communication. The in timers usually complain that the through timers are too serious. Come on, chill, live a little, be more spontaneous. Why do you have to be so regimented and rigid about time? Whereas the through timers complain that the in timers are disrespectful, inconsiderate, and sometimes lazy. Why? Because they see them taking too long. Well, the truth is that the in timers are people who, before they leave the house, so let's say they have a date, or let's say they have an agreement with their partner that they're going to leave their house at 3 o'clock. Well, it's 2:55, and they're thinking, I could write that last email. It will take me no time. And of course, now it's 3:15 and their partner is fuming in the car or outside the door in saying, this is disrespectful. We had an agreement. On the flip side, what also happens is that the in timer, because they are in the present moment in a very specific way, they do not mind being interrupted. So when they're doing work, the through timer comes in and wants to talk to them. They talk about whatever the through timer wants. They pick up phone calls from friends. However, if they're working together and a through timer is doing something specific, whether it is working on taxes, or maybe they work from home, or maybe they're doing a project and the in comes and interrupts, even if it's about something fantastic, like, let me tell you what happened. It's the best thing in the world. The through timer gets irritated and responds with short, sometimes curt language. They don't mean to be irritated. It's just that internally, like this internal clock is saying, I have devoted 30 minutes or 2 hours to this project. And now you coming and telling me about this, which knowing you may take 15 minutes, I'm not going to meet this deadline. So this is very telling about how couples communicate. And in my work with couples, what I have seen is that most couples' arguments are based on this idea of time and how they blame each other for something they don't even know they have, which is the concept of time.
That's so key because we hear so often that the most stressful part of a relationship might be finances or politics or religion, but really, you and I talked about how it really all comes down to how we perceive time, and that can be a source of great flow and cohesiveness in a relationship or this tension. How have you noticed that this shows up maybe even in your own relationships, or do you have a personal story of when you shifted your perspective on time?
Oh, yes. It happened, of course, in my own relationship, in my marriage with my beloved. We've been married for 20 years. And
Congratulations.
when, thank you, I am an in timer, he is a through timer. And so when we realized that our concept of time, the way our brains organize time was different, and it was not a personality trait. And this is very important to understand. Even though there are things you can do to support yourself and shift how your brain is organizing this concept of time, it is not personality. We were able to trace back arguments we've had for years and see, oh, this is because I'm an in timer and you're a through timer. And it gave us such a sense of understanding and relaxation around it and a possibility to talk about it and support each other about it. So, one of the things my husband does is that if we need to leave at 3 p.m., he doesn't tell me we need to leave at 3 p.m. He tells me with great joy. And this is the thing, like before, he would tell me begrudgingly, we leave at 2:30, knowing that I would not be ready at 2:30. I would be like literally finding a drawer to organize last minute because why not? I have 3 minutes. And so he would tell me, we leave at 2:30 and we need to be out the door by 2:35. At 2:15, he comes and says, love, remember we leave at 2:30. At 2:25, he says, do you think you're going to be ready by the door at 2:25? And so this is the way he has helped me. The way I have helped him is one, to understand that for through timers, being late produces a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear internally. And so to understand that I want my beloved to have a very steady and wonderful, relaxed nervous system when we're doing things together, when we're doing things with family, when he goes to work, etc. And so, how can I support that? Well, you can see me wearing a watch. You can see, well, you can't see here in my office, but I have clocks because I know that if I keep track of time by having devices around me, then I am likely to honor that. And so I'm constantly setting myself timers. And then when we go on vacation, which is a big thing for in timers and through timers, and where we can get into arguments, we have, for example, a morning in which we have planned in advance that it is a spontaneous morning. That way he knows there are these 4 or 5 hours. And then maybe we go somewhere else, we go on a hike, a tour, whatever. But we know there are these 5 hours that it's ample time for me, the in timer, to feel the elasticity of it and for him to know that there's an end to this. And so this is how we can support one another.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Alejandra. The other day someone asked me, what is the glue, just in my opinion, what is the glue that holds a relationship together? And what came to mind to me was upholding the other person's best interests. And when you're both doing that, what you just described was this really thoughtful way of honoring who each other is and finding the synchronicities and ways to make that work for both. And that was just so beautifully said. I love that. Have you noticed any patterns with regard to a person's profession or industry? Like, are creative types more tend to be in timers, or, have you noticed any patterns like that?
Yes, absolutely. What I've noticed in the people I've worked with, the creative types are more of the in timers. Although I have worked with various clients who are very creative and they are through timers, but they have very specific projects. What I have noticed is that people who are in timers, they tend to not enjoy having deadlines. They feel anxious by deadlines and they do not follow their own internal deadlines.
Mm.
Whether it is a creative project, something related to work, if they are self employed, or it is volunteering or something really enjoyable that they want to do, like gardening, they may say, I'm going to spend an hour doing this, and then 3 hours go by, they're still doing that. Or they may say, I'm going to finish cleaning the garage by Sunday. But on Saturday, they got so many calls from friends or something else distracted them. And that was more important for them in the moment that they do not tend to honor their own deadlines. Whereas the through timers, they do. They tend to honor not only their externally imposed deadlines, but also their internal deadlines, their self imposed deadlines. What I would say is that I find people of all different kinds of professions, but the in timers tend to be more creative and tend to do more activities in which they really feel the joy and the bliss in losing themselves in elasticity of time.
Yeah. So it sounds like through timers and in timers have a lot to learn from each other. If
Yes.
the person listening could do one thing to expand their sense of time, and maybe this is different based on what type they are, what would you say that would be?
Well, to feel like you're expanding your sense of time for a through timer means that you need to lean into the joy of spontaneity and the joy of lack of structure. However, you need the bookends of when is it going to start and when is it going to end. Giving yourself, for example, during the weekend or during your day off, or if you're retired, having an entire half day in which you say, I am going to be open to receive whatever life is giving me, that expands the perception of time for a through timer. Whereas for an in timer, the in timers who usually complain about there's never enough time, they need to have structure and they need to block periods of time and give themselves at least 15 minutes longer or half an hour more than they think it's going to take and block that period of time and then say to themselves out loud from this time until this time, I am going to do X. Having a planner is very useful for the in timers. And so once they do that, what happens is that you allow your brain to go through this tunnel and this elastic sensation of time in a very enjoyable way. And then you give it some kind of closure. So something that I'm showing you here is my timer. I have everything blocked, including my morning rituals, meditation, yoga practices, not because it gives me a sense of rigidity, but because for me, an in timer, it gives me a sense of freedom, expansion, that I'm actually able to do what's nourishing and meaningful to me.
It's almost like there's guardrails, right? There's a place and a time for you within which you get to expand and and create. I love that. Alejandra, this content is so wonderful. I know that you have a free gift for listeners so that they can take a deeper dive on this. Can you tell us about this beautiful type assessment that you offer?
Yes, I am so excited about this. It is a checklist that will help you discover your time and your communication type. What I really invite you to do when you download this checklist is first to connect with yourself mindfully and find out how your organization type shapes your communication and impacts all your relationships. This is not a tool to diagnose others. Once you have it within yourself and you can see where you are in the spectrum, then talk to the people in your life and have them assess where they are. And then you can have beautiful and meaningful conversations about how you can support each other so that you can decrease your arguments, especially with those you live with, your closest friends. You know, if you tend to be late or if they tend to complain that you should have been 5 minutes earlier, then this will decrease your arguments by 75%.
Well, and even as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking back on my own different relationships and thinking, man, if I had known this, if I had known that this was a part of someone's nature, it would have led to less arguments because it adds this layer of understanding. It's not that they're lazy and they don't care about being late when I want to be on time, or it's not just that I'm rigid, like it's anxiety producing to be late. So I love what you're sharing. So I'm so thankful. Alejandra, is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't touched on?
Yes, that this impacts communication because, for example, an in timer, when they're going through intense feelings or something they perceive as important, they want to talk about it right away. And the through timer usually says, I can't talk about this. I do not want to talk about it, which then sometimes leads the in timer to feel abandoned. My partner doesn't care about me. I'm not important to them. I want to matter. It's never a good time. And so having this understanding about how our brain organizes time is very useful so that the in timer can ask the through timer, does this time work? And if it doesn't, the through timer can say, not at this moment, but I'd love to hear what you'd like to say this evening after we put the kids to bed. And so this is how we can really support each other in communication. And there are more things that you're going to discover in the checklist about how this impacts every aspect of your communication. So I'm so excited that you have invited me and you have really made this space to talk about time. I do want to say one final thing that the word time is the word most frequently used in the English language.
Wow. That is a beautiful note to end on. And that's why we're here, to learn how to really harness and expand and honor each other's time.
For people to download the checklist that I put together for them, you can go to languagealchemy.com/time type.
Beautiful. Alejandra, I'm so grateful that time allowed us to be together today. Thank you for being with us and sharing so much of your wisdom on time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah.
My pleasure. Thanks again for helping our listeners to make today a little bit more extraordinary.
I hope this episode was useful for you. Thank you so much for listening. Until next episode, and as we say in Argentina, ciao, ciao. Original music by Gary LaPoe. You can find all links in the show notes at languagealchemy.com.